I'm back for another episode of Uncapped for Set 11, where I have my viewers submit their TFT ranked games and ask me to VOD review to help them improve. In this edition, I take a hard-stuck diamond player who's looking to climb the Masters for the first time and loves to cook and play flexibly, perhaps cooking a little too much. And if you have a banger game for me to review in the future, send it to coaching@frodan.com or join my Discord and post in the VOD review request channel. Today's game is from a player called QuantumPlatinum. They said, "Hi, I am currently Diamond 453 LP. I started in Set 9 where I reached Plat, then I reached Diamond in Set 10 and want to reach Masters in Set 11. I reached Diamond this set and was on my way to Masters and even peaked Diamond 2 80 LP, but then went on a massive losing streak. I feel that. I sent you a game where I felt like I could have had a way better placement, and I am looking for pointers on how to get better." Don't worry, Quantum, I got you. So we're gonna start things off with Scuttle Puddle, and I noticed that we put Ash into our team planner, so already having a game plan around an expensive comp, which I think is a good starting base. On Scuttle Puddle, you get a lot more gold, a lot more resources, and Ash is a really resource-intensive composition because you need a lot of gold to hit the 4 and 5 costs, and you want a lot of items. You can hit Ash 2 with items, Annie 2 with items, Lilia with items. If you get into Zir, you want to give him items as well. And so I think this is a good core concept for a game plan, but it depends a lot on our itemization. I like the units that we're holding as well. We have Darius pair and Ari pair. That's a good set of early game units to play around. Some of the best openers currently on the patch. Checking our Exalted, we see it's the Amumu Syndra variant with, like Yorick or Rek'Sai. You can play the Dryad Faded with it and throw in an Amumu. It can be a little bit awkward, though, if you don't have trait emblems to fix things. Usually, you end up going for that if you get a really good start for it. But right now, we don't have any tiers or rods, so it might be a little bit awkward to try and force into the Syndra line, but we do have an Ari pair, so we'll see. We do get a rod. Looks like we're on the fence of whether or not we want to pick up Kog'Maw or Kha'Zix, and so are we going to buy Kog'Maw because he is a sniper and invoker that ties in with Ash? We don't. We skip it. Okay. In general, I would say that you don't want to skip those Kog'Maws because you really never know if he will come back, and it is a very cheap unit to hold that's not going to cost you a lot of economy. And even in this portal, in the future, let's say you're in a spot where you can't make 40 or 50 gold. That's okay on Scuttle Puddle in particular if you hold on to, say, like a Kog'Maw pair, because later on in the game, it's going to be really valuable to have that unit for the synergies. But to be fair, he didn't draw a bow or sword, so maybe he said, hey, I'm not going to play into Kog'Maw because I have like Ionic Spark opener. Let's go ahead and dive into the augments and see if that ends up following up with some of that logic. Starting off, we have Latent Forge, which I think is a little bit weaker on this patch because it's less consistent of what type of anvil you can get. The reason why it's less consistent is because with so many new artifacts introduced into the game, you might already be committed to a certain path, and Latent Forge might give you very situational things that are good for, let's say if we play AP, you get like an 80 assassin item, or you get like a ranged 80 carry backline item, or maybe you get something that's like a really good combination for a frontliner, but it can just be kind of awkward if you just get like a suboptimal artifact. So I do think it's weaker than usual, but if you do have a lot of good situational knowledge, let's say your specialty is that you know the stats of all the items and you know all the combinations, you could go for something like that. And you play for a high cap on Scuttle Puddle. High cap meaning you play for like a really powerful late game composition. And so because you're going to be able to get the resource and you're going to be able to 2-star units, if you know really powerful combinations like Suspicious Trenchcoat on Udyr and you get like a Spark on him and you do a bunch of like damage with him, maybe that's the possible angle you could be thinking about. Best Friends is generically a good silver combat augment, and it's just good at all phases of the game. Also, way more flexible in positioning than a bunch of other things that might require it, like Unified Resistance. So in general, I like it. Tiny Titans is okay right now, but it doesn't really feed into any of our current game plan. It's not like we're playing Fortune or anything like that, so I do think it's a little bit on the weaker side compared to usual. So out of all these, I think I would probably keep Best Friends and roll the first and third option, but I'm okay as well if we like Latent Forge. I think that's like a personal preference thing. Okay, so we roll options 2 and 3, and I think both are viable as well. These are all really solid choices. Iron Assets will just let us make gold a lot quicker and give us 2 full items if we want to try and play for a win streak and tempo. And then Silver Spoon is kind of like the opposite, just gives you 10 straight up gold in terms of EXP, and it lets you try to win streak on stage 2. But I think on this portal in particular, it's a little bit lower value because you are going to get more gold than usual. You are going to get more items than usual, so it's not nearly as good as the stats might indicate. You might look at this at 4.37, 4.4, and you're like, hey, that has to be better than Latent Forge. So it looks like he's leaning towards Latent Forge, which I think is okay, but I personally think I would take something like Iron Assets and just make sure that I can hit my gold interest much earlier. Another thing to consider is in this lobby, you might be more contested than usual, and being able to roll earlier than your opponents is going to be a really important facet. If you look at your line and you say, hey, I can play Ashe, or I can play Syndra, or I can play Kai'Sa, these are some of the most contested units currently in the meta. And being able to make gold earlier on a high econ portal lets you roll faster. Let's say you can roll on 3-7 with 10, 15 more gold, and that might give you a big advantage in playing contested. So it's just something to think about. I don't know, because we haven't really scouted very much to be able to tell. And still so early that game plans could be fluid depending on what encounter even comes up next round. So I'm just kind of speaking all right now in hypothetics. Okay, so we do go for Latent Forge, which means that we are going to be a little bit on the weaker side to start things off, but that's okay because it's a silver and there's some good combinations. We are playing Fated and we are linking Kindred and Ahri. I'm guessing this is to try and kill as many units as possible. I personally would like to link Yasuo plus a backliner unit, preferably Ahri, and then put the Spark onto Yasuo. So right away, this tells me that we're not paying that close attention to things like the Fated bonus on Yasuo versus the Dryad onto Rek'Sai. Fated Yasuo gives you like a 300 HP shield, and then you get 150 HP for putting it on Rek'Sai. 300 is greater than 150, and in the early game, those flash stats matter a lot. In the late game, 150 shield is really negligible. That's like one auto attack from a carry. But in the early game, that could be the entire swing, and keeping your Ionic Spark alive allows you to snowball the fight, because the more it stays alive, the more it's zapping your opponents and shredding their magic resistance, the more damage you can deal and win. And so in these small skirmishes early, it is very key, especially because we're playing Latent Forge and we want to win every fight we possibly can. The counter argument would be if we want to put an item onto a unit that we want to sell because we want to hold on to Yasuo, but I don't think Yasuo is that important to even the Fated strategies that you can't put items on him early. In fact, he is the best item holder early for a lot of these frontline items on the Fated line. Looks like the encounter being 4-2 moved means that it's going to be unreliable. So we should basically think about playing around 2 augments for a while instead of 3, just something to keep in mind. Looks like we are losing this fight. That's okay. I don't think this is an Ionic Spark on the Yasuo diff, but maybe helps kill one more unit. No, it does not. It's not a big deal. Oh my god, we're selling our pairs for the Zoe. That is something you don't want to do, especially in these early stages of the game, because pairs are really valuable. The only reason why you want to do this is if Zoe is a core unit to a strategy. Let's say you're trying to play Zoe reroll with Arcanist, which is possible, but that's a little bit ambitious given your spot because you're selling pairs. Or 2, you're trying to play for like Fortune. There is a Kabuko in the shop, but it does not look like we are committed to that. In fact, it looks like we're closer to selling Zoe. We didn't get punished for it because we didn't end up hitting the pair immediately in the next shop, but now we don't even have the option to upgrade. And that is something to consider when you're trying to play for your strongest board. Not holding those pairs there can be catastrophic to our game plan, especially if we need to win streak. So don't do that. Keep your pairs. That being said, we did make 30 gold, so in the end, we prioritized Econ, which I think is all right. Looking at the carousel, we are second pick. We have an open glove. What do we choose to pick here? We're going for a cloak, which is interesting. I think cloak here is on a 3 cost and it's on a Zoe, but we could have picked up a tier. And I think in these kinds of games and spots, once again, we get a little bit more gold than usual. I want to have really good items. If you think about it, what does this cloak really want to become? Probably just one item, which is an adaptive helm. Because if you get another rod, you don't really want to make another Ionic Spark. And if you get sword, bow, another glove, it could just be kind of awkward where you can't really slam an item. And so yes, we get to prioritize that gold, but I think the component is a little bit too weak right now. That being said, looks like we are deviating. We sold our Fated. We're going to a lose streak. And we even took Ashe out of our team planner. So we're pivoting from our initial strategy here. I see. So we're going to be going into a Silas line. And actually, I think this is pretty clever because Silas is one of the units that wants multiple cloaks. You want Spark and you want Adaptive. You can go for Crown Guard or something else that's really good for Silas in particular as an AP melee bruiser. Also picking up core like the Nico and Zoe, so could end up playing around AP reroll, playing around Janna, Zyra, Zoe, Soraka, so on and so forth. And now we're committed to the loss streak, which I think is smart. Make sure to lean into the momentum. We're on 3 loss. We're at 50 gold. We're going to prioritize Econ. And so now we're going to go into the end of stage 2 with maximum Econ and 4 loss, 80 HP. that's totally fine from this spot. Okay, our creep rounds give us another fortune unit. Kind of wish we did hold onto the Kabuko if we wanted to play around it. We do end up selling it. Looks like it's not on the table. The golden orb gives us a small and a big duplicator, and we hold pairs now of things like Janna and Nico. So we have a really good core game plan right now of playing around the Dragon Lord Altruist Heavenly core in order to play for stage 3 rather. Okay, so we're figuring out our items at this point. I think we can slam an adaptive helm. Okay, we go for a steadfast heart. It's on a 1-star Malphite. Okay, we end up selling it because we recognize it's not that valuable. Even though we do get Heavenly, it's just not that impressive. And he puts it onto the Amumu. I'm surprised that we didn't put it on Diana because Diana is, you know, our Dragon Lord Sage frontline right now. But Amumu's fine, especially if we can get an Porcelain unit to complement his stats as well as a Warden. Also, I do think that in these kinds of spots, it is worth sometimes rolling a little bit because we have so many different pairs of things that we could possibly hit. Okay, looks like we're pulling up our team planner, and now we are going to transition to the AP reroll. Okay, let's pause and look at the 3-2 augments. So first of all, we got Stand United, which actually ends up being really good for that AP reroll comp because you activate so many 2 and 3 traits. You get things like 2 Arcanist, 2 Heavenly, 2 Altruist, 2 Sage, 2 Dragon Lord, so on and so forth. So you get a lot of extra power there, which could be really nice. So Stand United ends up being really good with that kind of Story Weaver Altruist type of compositions. You don't really use a lot of the AD, but the AP power boost can be really nice given that you have a bunch of support traits. So you just make up for having a lot of activations of it. So I like it if we do commit to this reroll. That being said, we do have a big duplicator, which makes me not want to actually commit to the reroll necessarily because we could use that on a 4 cost, which could be really good. So I'm not entirely sure. Pandora's items is not that good in this spot, even though they changed it to now give you 2 random components. I think we don't have that many components to play around currently. And I don't think we're necessarily trying to hard force a composition that needs specific items. We're not playing like Bard reroll, for example, that needs 2 Rage Blades or something like that. Gifts of the Fallen is better for, you know, the hyper carry, like melees, the Heavenly, Canes, for example. Not necessarily like what we're trying to do right now. And if you want offensive combat stats, I think we go for Stand United. We roll and we get Razor Crowd and Gargantuan Resolve. Gargantuan Resolve is much better for the AD portion of melee compositions now because they nerfed the AP part of it. So because we slam Spark, it's probably off the table. And Razor Crowd is probably just not that pickable here, even though we do have a couple of 3 costs included with Zoe and Diana and Soraka. It's just too weak in general. And in fact, they probably might need to buff this augment a little bit moving forward. So I think Stand United here is the choice for me. And we hit a Janna 2 and we hit a Zyra 2. So things are looking good. I don't mind rolling a little bit, which is great. Fantastic. That 1 roll is huge. And we can even straight up use the duplicator if we want right now. We're playing 3 Arcanists, so we can probably take out like Zoe, for example, and play the Sage with Zyra. Duplicate Zyra 2 and play an adaptive on her. I think that was a very powerful play. We missed it. I think we got a little dizzy because we have so many options. I'm also very perplexed why we're not slamming adaptive. Adaptive ends up being like a pretty decent mana generation source, and the flexibility of it is really powerful because you can slam it on a backliner to start things off, and then later in the game put it on, say, Sylas if we're committed back into Sylas. Although from the looks of it, it seems like we want to play around like AP reroll, and we're spending a lot of time looking at our team builder, but look at what happened in the... Actually, hold on a second. Look at the shop. We have Sylas and we have Lilia. So we can immediately play Sylas over the Amumu and just start playing into Sage's Sylas. This is like a perfect setup. Put the adaptive on somebody else. And then once we get another Sylas, we just immediately duplicate. Oh man, we didn't even put the Aatrox in. Aatrox is the ghostly bruiser that connects the Sylas as well as the Alawi. Oh my goodness, an opportunity missed here. And we're on 2 streaks, so we really want to win this fight. Man, if we got the Spark onto the Sylas, I think we could win this fight. And then we use the duplicator onto the ghostly Alawi. Our spot would be so good for Sage Flex. Dude, where's the Sabio Flex, man? Where's the Sage Flex? Me in a video. This is exactly what we talked about. This spot is amazing for it. Okay, so we're pivoting again off of the reroll line. At first, we were looking at Ashe and trying to see if we can play around it. Then we pivoted to AP reroll. Now we're pivoting into the Sylas Sage variants. Okay, bow on Lee Sin is fine. It's a 4 cost, and you can make red buff if you really want. You could also use bow like on Nashers for Silas. I think a lot of people don't know that, but Nashers on Silas is pretty solid as well as a third item. Okay, then we have Riven and Diana pair. We can use this duplicator, and now we also get the Latent Forge, so maybe you can pick up something awesome like the Suspicious Trenchcoat for Silas, and we have it. We have Suspicious Trenchcoat. This is one of the best items for Silas. And we pick Mittens for Lee Sin. And we have 2 traits active for Stand United. Oh no. Okay, this might be a meta knowledge thing, but Suspicious Trenchcoat is particularly really good on Silas because the units that split from Silas keep the amount of damage he deals, but he gets all the benefits from things like bruisers. And so if you have Silas split into 3 copies, you basically just get like 3 copies of Silas with almost no downside, and Silas just ends up becoming like the team. Like he ends up dealing so much damage as an AoE group of units because there's just so many of them that they overwhelm tanks, they can assassinate the back line, and they all shred for each other because you have 3 sparks. Okay, that's meta knowledge thing, so I'm not gonna fault you on that. But if you're gonna pick Latent Forge, you better know what are some of the OP combos. Okay, so if you want pointers, look at the stats of items. If you're gonna be taking things like Latent Forge or Living Forge, Portal Forge, or whatever, just make sure that you're familiar with some of the OP things so that way you don't miss easy layups. This was an alley-oop. If you look at the best performing Ornn items on like Tactics Tools or Meta TFT, whatever stat sites, you can see that Suspicious Trenchcoat is top 5 item currently with a really high win rate. And if you expand and just look at the highest placements in the deltas, Silas is the best performing 4 cost, even higher than the 5 costs. Like he's higher than all of these 5 costs. I can get a ton of value off of it. Even Udyr, who a lot of people like to play in the late stages of the game. And this is like kind of meta knowledge, but at the same time, all this is like priced in the sense that if it's bugged for a good reason to make it really OP, it'll be reflected in the stats. So just make sure to review that kind of stuff if you're going to be picking an augment or an artifact that will potentially have high impact in the game. All right, so we're on the carousel now. Let's go ahead and look at the pick. I think it's going to be Lee Sin with the bow. I think that's totally fine because bow is half of an anti-heal component. It is a little bit awkward, though, because it's pretty much just red buff that you're looking for and maybe things like Giant Slayer. You don't really want Shiv nearly as much. All right, so we're back at it, and I'm sorry to make you watch it again, but we picked Mittens over Suspicious Trenchcoat. And then also, another thing to think about was that would have been our 3rd Silas item, so we would have been done effectively itemizing Silas, and then we could focus on other things instead of spreading out our items the current way it is right now. And right now, we're taking out our team planner, trying to play around Lilia right now, I guess for Mythic, because we're trying to look for Stand United value. Okay, and we hit Zyra 2, so we can try to tech it in. Also, we have 2 traits in for Stand United at the moment. So looks like we're planning really far ahead. We're stacking a couple of fights here, which I argue you don't have to do. Also, leveling is pretty much free here because you just lose like no gold for doing it because we're going to go to level 8 always. And so the overlevel doesn't matter. And so we're finally getting there. We clear our team builder and we're kind of getting there finally. Building around Silas, Galio, and the Sages. I do think that a lot of times in this spot, people feel tempted to go into Stand United value, but you actually don't have to. You can just play Stand United for like a 5 or 6 piece. And you think about how much that you get for doing that. Stand United gives you 2.5 AD and AP for each trait activated. So you might feel like incentivized to go for like 10 traits, which is, really important. But if you get, even just 5, 6, I think that's still okay because it still gives you a comparable amount of power spike. Because getting that, 15 to 17.5 AD AP can still be really, really valuable. Okay, we get dropped a bunch of items. So we have a bunch of items and duplicators. So we're going to go ahead and level to 8 and roll and slam our items. I'm looking at Morello because we don't have anti-heal and Shojin, which is really good. Really good combo. If you want to play around Lilia temporarily, you can go for Morello Shojin on Lilia and roll. Okay, at least we can slam items. If you don't want to slam Morello because you forget that you have anti-heal, or let's say you have anti-heal in this spot, you can go for like Nasher's 3rd item on Silas. We're talking about, and we're not slamming items, we're not rolling. This is a really valuable transition round. Okay, we're rolling now, which is good, but they increase the amount of damage you take on stage 4 these days, so this could cost placements, and actually might end up doing so. We also slam Redemption onto Silas. That's not what we want to do. I'd actually rather have Mittens on Silas than Redemption. Redemption is much better on a unit that, one, benefits more directly from being straight up a tank. And 2, Silas moves out of range of allies. So Redemption is pretty much going to be only healing him, and he's not going to often Redemption heal other tanks. We don't have a remover as well. It's okay, though. We won that fight, which is important. And we're coming up on an encounter. Maybe this encounter can help us a lot. Oh, my God. Yorick reduces the cost to... Okay, well, that's a little bit unfortunate. Hey, it's encounters. The most important tip I can give you here is don't let it rattle you. Keep your mental solid. In fact, it's good that you just followed up and rolled here. You can make your board really strong. We're looking for 2 stars. We're now picking up Soraka. Soraka ends up being a really valuable unit late game for Stand United because her activations of Heavenly and Outrus are really good team-wide support traits. So I recommend at least trying to play around Soraka. Ah, I see. Because we're playing around Nico and we're playing around the Mythic Arcanist, we're trying to tag in this Lysandra instead. So we activate 6 traits. Okay, I can see that. I do think that this is playing for lower cap at level 8 right now. But if it's temporary and we transition to 9 and roll for a better board, I think I'm okay with that. Our leftover components are pretty awkward, but we do have a Lysandra pair with the duplicator. So we get this is Lysandra 2. Okay, so we go for the glove, which makes our components weaker, but we have a Lysandra 2, so maybe we end up printing items. I'm just worried that we're not going to have anti-heal in the late game if we don't get another bow because we don't have another belt. So not having Morello in these kinds of late game fights against really strong boards. We looked at a Dryad board, for example, that might have Gnar 3. We can't kill it. Or just some of these other champions that are going to sustain like a lot, like the Fated boards. If you don't have the anti-heal, you're just going to get stuck on tanks really often. And Silas being stuck on a tank is usually a death sentence for your fights. Going up against a Mythic board playing Cog 2. This should be a win. Looks like this person is going straight to level 9. Oh dear. Actually, this person looks like they tried to reroll for Kog'Maw and they missed really hard. Or they are just trying to straight up Fast 9 AP, which I think is a lot weaker this patch. Fast 9 in general right now is significantly worse given that they nerfed the amount of gold, or rather they increased the amount of gold that they need to get to level 9. And so you have less gold than usual and you're taking more damage per stage. It's harder to get to 9 right now. Looking at our team builder, we're thinking about how to cap higher and it's just Wukong. I would love to get out of Mythic because Mythic is inherently pretty selfish. If you're thinking about these late game boards with Stand United, you're trying to buff your whole team. You're trying to have the sum of its parts be really good. And so Mythic only affects 3 units. But if you have, Altruists and Dragon Lord and even like taking in things like the Bruiser and keeping that is a lot more team-wide buffs, which is much more value. And that just stacks, right? As you know, if you just get enough stat stacking with 2 team-wide augment buffs and just it starts to tally up too much and you get the edge over equally strength compositions. But we are getting to 9 and we are holding extra 4 costs like Ashe. I like that. Just denying that can be really huge for people who don't know. Even if you're in a 2-way contest for 4 costs, holding an extra copy of it costs every player 10 more gold to find that 1 extra copy. And if you're 3-way contested for a unit, it's 25 gold if you're holding that extra copy. So it's brutal for anybody that's getting contested. Hence why a lot of people complain about bag sizes currently. We popped our anvil. We have no anti-heal items. So we're going to take this adaptive instead. I guess maybe we hope we print items instead for Lysandra. We're going for spread items. I really don't like this, actually. I think this is quite poor. We spread our tank items. Yes, they're 2 steadfast hearts, so they're kind of inefficient to stack on top of each other, but tank items are best when they're put together because they multiply off each other. Steadfast heart gives you, for example, more damage reduction and more HP, so it makes each steadfast heart more effective. Yes, you get diminishing returns on it, but it's better when they're together as opposed to spread apart. And Tahm Kench and Nico are neither really strong tanks, so I actually pretty strongly dislike that. Okay, we're at 9, but we're a little bit on the poor side. We're rolling past things like Morgana, who I think is a better Sage. We made Lily at 2. I like Nautilus here over Tahm Kench 1-1. It's a Mythic Warden, and you're trying to play around the Warden for the Amumu for Porcelain, so allows you to ladder higher. I even wouldn't mind selling Nico, because yes, you lose the Arcanist, but you don't have Heavenly activated anyways, so it's fine to do that temporarily until you get to like Wukong, a better unit. Either way, I think you have to start identifying what are some of the weakest units in your composition and think about also the associated cost of trying to play around their synergies. Like Nico isn't just a dead unit because she doesn't deal damage, she doesn't tank, but she also forcing you in a way to play Lilia, which almost feels like it's forcing you to play Janna until you find Rakan. Or you can go the other way direction and just sell Lilia and Nico to play 2 more Dragon Lords like Rakan and Lee Sin, and then, you know, tech in like Irelia, for example, if you get 80 items later on. And so I think these are all different kinds of small things that are weighing the board down and stopping it from capping higher. And also we're rolling like a lot of gold, and I feel like we're directionless. I feel like we don't know how to improve our board. And usually in this case, you can just kind of like take your time and collect the 5 costs and start thinking about how the 5 costs are going to function inside your composition. Because right now we're just rolling our gold to 0, and it looks like we're rolling just for like 1 Wukong, which is minimizing our chances of hitting like a lot. Because at this point, if we're rolling only for like 1 5 cost unit at 9, it's 10% odds. And even if you do hit, is it going to spike your board dramatically? Probably not. We did pick up Morello, by the way, on Carousel, which is really good. And now here comes our Augment at 5/5. Reinforcement, Mana Shield, Capricious Forge. I don't like any of these, actually. Reinforcement is really low value now that we have all a bunch of 4 costs. And I can't think of many 4 costs that would dramatically improve our board. Maybe Ornn, if we find a Zir, so that way we can get Ornn 2, and Ornn is very contested. But you have to roll a lot to get to Ornn, so I don't think that's actually really good, and we don't need more gold. Mana Shield is usually better when you have Vertical Invokers, and we're not doing that. And Capricious Forge is awkward because we spread out our items so much. We have 1 item on Lilia, we have 1 item on Nico, 1 item on Tahm Kench. I mean, ideally in a world, we actually sell everything. So in some ways, Capricious Forge might be good. In fact, the more I think about it, Capricious Forge encourages us to sell our bad units, roll, stack the tank items, stack things like Gunblade onto Lissandra, and then put Capricious Forge on higher impact 5 costs, and that helps us bridge the gap of trying to scale up our board. But yeah, I don't really like these augments for our current situation. I'm okay with rolling all of them, or picking Capricious Forge and kind of selling part of our board here. We roll all of our options. Know Your Enemy is actually really good because we have Stand United, so we have a lot of active traits. That's a really easy combo. I think this is actually fantastic. Almost makes me just think that this is the pick immediately. Portable Forge, I mean, I wouldn't encourage us to pick Portable Forge. The weakest point of Portable Forge is at its late game, and I don't think we have as much Portable Forge knowledge as I would like, so I think I would stay away from it. Also, it could be a situation where you get like a really good item for Silas again, but you have 3 items on Silas. So yeah, I'd probably stay away from this. Boiling Point, we already have Morello. This would have actually been nice if we needed it, if we didn't have anti-heal. So in a way, the game provided you some ways to get Morello, but we don't need it now. And we're not playing around vertical porcelain anyways. One thing to consider, by the way, is that we do have 22 health. So the pivot that I was suggesting, and yeah, it's kind of difficult because asking someone to pivot again after they pivoted multiple times in one game would be difficult, but this is not actually a pivot. It's more of a transition. I think people confuse pivoting and transitioning a lot in TFT. Pivoting is like your core game plan is changing, but while transitioning is trying to shift from one phase of the game to another. And I think right now we're having difficulties transitioning from mid-late game to just straight up late game. One thing also considers that our positioning is a little bit suboptimal. I think our Lissandra actually was onto our Ornn. I'm gonna go ahead and actually rewind this. Yeah, it looks like Lissandra was targeting Ornn instead of the Silas. So you position Lissandra onto a tank that Silas can't kill, or you try to position it on a frontline melee carry like their enemy Silas, enemy Kayn, enemy Lee Sin, so on and so forth. Diana offers you a treasure armory. This could be really clutch because our item situation is pretty awkward. First one is pretty good, actually. Ruden's Hurricane, Spear of Shojin, Edge of Night. Actually, the more I think about it, this is actually a really good setup because this gives us an excuse to transition out of these units again. I mean, Spear Trojan is just good on Lilia right now, and then Edge of Night is actually like Biss on Lissandra. And we talked about how you can have 80 units like Wukong and Irelia as well. So this just kind of gives you a way to go into it. In fact, the more I think about it, you can also do like Runin's Morello and Gunblade onto like Irelia, and then Edge of Night onto Lissandra, and then Shojin like anybody, like, you know, Azir or other units you find. Rakan. So this is actually a great treasure armory, I think. I would take it and try to transition it. And the reason why I would consider doing that as well is because if you're able to survive this round, you have 2 rounds of like Scuttle Puddle resources. So you'll be able to load up and go for another level 9 roll down. And I think that's a way you can cap higher and play for more placements. We roll, okay. Now we have Quicksilver, Hextech, Gunblade, and Crown Guard. I don't really like Crown Guard in this spot. It's actually the best item for Silas at this point, but we have 3 items on Silas and we can't really get that redemption off of him, kind of getting punished for that early decision. And we already have a Gunblade, 2 Gunblades. I mean, I guess we could put this other one onto Lissandra, but Lissandra's not really doing like a lot of damage. She's much more like utility. Gunblade is much better on Lissandra if you start stacking things like the Arcanist onto her or get like a lot of AP on her, so she can like kill things and like have high burst and heal your your front line. And Lissandra's also just weaker. She's casting less often. So I think Gunblade is a lot less impactful because she might cast once, maybe twice per fight. So I think it's like a lot weaker. So it's probably Quicksilver on Lissandra here. And then Crown Guard on, I don't know, like Nico or Tom Kench, and then Gunblade. Like, this is pretty bad. Okay, it's maybe not bad. It's mediocre, like very mid. But on Scuttlepuddle, mid is bad because everything is just stronger and has more resources. So you have to like aim higher. Don't settle when you're trying to play for these like treasuries unless you have to. I think we're in this position where maybe we're playing for top 4, so we're like trying to be conservative, but I think this is a spot where you have 2 more rerolls. I think I would reroll and try to figure it out here. Yeah, if you miss, it sucks. I mean, you probably should take the first one, but I do think that making a correct choice in these situations are actually the good form of encounter RNG. I think there's a lot of skill and a decision making to be made for these kinds of moments. Okay, we end up taking it. We got the Irelia, but that's okay. I would like to hold this Irelia, and oh, we're rolling here because I see. We're trying to play for placements. We find the Wukong. We're not really scouting. We're kind of generically repositioning. At least we have the Lissandra behind the Silas. Lissandra's on the Ornn again. She chunks Ornn, but Ornn doesn't get thrown back. But our opponent's playing Lilia 2 with Hui 1 and Cho'Gath 3, you know, like Last Whisper Kog'Maw on the back, Q Cone, like a Chalice in the back, only buffing 2 units. This was really good matchmaking. I think we got like a really weak player who was probably going to always bot 4, so end up getting fortunately bailed out there. But hey, we take those. Nashor's pretty good. So at this point, I would open sell Lilia. We already got top 4, so you know, now let's play for a better placement in general. Like if we keep this board, we're going forth. So sell Lilia, sell Nico, sell other things, go back up to like 40, 50 gold. Like if we sold that, we would have been at over 50 gold and go for another roll down and try our best to play for a better board. Looking at these item choices, we picked red buff, but we have death cap, which I think is just better because we already have Morello. Don't need red buff and Morello. These gloves here looks pretty good though for Wukong, and he goes for it. Now we're picking up the 5 costs. We would have had Udyr 2. We would have had Irelia 2. I guess, okay, you know what? Same 5 costs. Never mind. But we didn't get the full roll down. We have about like 20, 30 gold on our boat bench equivalent. And now we're queuing up into double Dryad aided Syndra. So we're probably just dead here. And once again, our Lissandra is on an Ornn. But yeah, we are very, very dead. But hey, that's okay. 4th place, top 4, given that, you know, we were struggling for a good portion of the game. And we end up playing kind of a new comp I've never really seen. You're just making it up and you're able to top 4 it. That's really good. That being said, you asked for pointers of how to improve, and it's just a lot of small things across the board. One, I would look at itemization. I think that you showed a lot of like baseline knowledge of like what kind of items you want, but you didn't understand like how to play around your augments with the Latent Forge, and there's also some key moments of itemization you got really lost by not prioritizing. 2, you need to study up on how to like uncap your board in high econ portals. Don't vote for Scuttlepuddle, don't vote for Crabrave or Gold Subscription or Loot Subscription if you don't really know how to cap your boards higher. I mean, yeah, it's like fun to play with more resources, but other people are going to be playing like these crazy like 9 Umbral, like, you know, 10 Faded type of situations, and if you don't know how to cap high enough, you're probably just going to play for 4th really often. 3, tidy up those transition turns. Make sure that you know exactly what you want to do and when. We got stuck looking a lot, not rolling our gold. And when we finally rolled, it was like a little bit unfortunate. We got screwed by the encounters, but that happens. That's fine. And then 4, try to look at those small positioning nuances. There's a lot of times we just weren't getting value off Lissandra. And if we're putting a lot of resources into a 5 cost 2-star like Lissandra with 3 items, we really want to make sure she lands correctly. All right, Quantum, I hope those tips really helped you. Thanks for submitting the VODs, being brave to subject yourself to the eyes of thousands of TFT players. But this one was really fun, and I think you're going to hit matches in no time if you tidy up all those tips. Like we said at the beginning of the video, if you want to send VODs my way, I'm happy to review more of them and publish more coaching YouTube videos throughout set 11, coaching@frodan.com. That's it for me. I'll see you guys next time.